your socks! Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast, now streaming on all major podcast platforms. A Till Valhalla Project ambassador. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a My Veteran Story. But before we get into that, are you enjoying the podcast? And be sure to go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check it out, see what's going on there. We do have a merchandise tab you can click on. Go get you some cool gear. Help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Don't forget, you could also become a patron if you would like to get some behind-the-scenes type of things. And that also helps us in getting our veteran voices out as well. Big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project, allowing me to be an ambassador for that amazing organization. They're out there doing amazing things. And if you can help them in any way, please do so. Go to their website. That's tillvalhallaproject.com.
Ton Tavern, birthplace of the Corps. We as Marines hold this history close to our hearts. Wouldn't it be spectacular if the establishment was born again? The Ton Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3, is taking the task and is looking to the Marines to once again save the day. Help the Lost Art podcast in raising funds to help get the Ton built once again only 100 yards from the original establishment in Philadelphia. We are looking for Marines to donate $25 representing the upcoming 250th birthday of the Corps. Spread the message and help establish the Ton, a place for Marine brethren to gather and remember our historic beginning. Go to the Lost Art GoFundMe page and donate today. The Ton Legacy Foundation, reestablishing our birthplace.
All right. Well, with that, I got Jamie here, and I don't know, I didn't ask you how to say your last name, and I apologize. How do you say it?
Bunetto, Bunetto.
Bunetto. Okay, Bunetto. Jamie Bunetto here, and we're gonna kind of start at the beginning. But how you been doing so far?
Doing okay.
All right, nice. Well, let's start where you grew up, and then kind of talk us through a little bit of that, and then what drew you into military service.
Actually, Joliet, Illinois, about half hour, 40 minutes southwest Chicago. My father had got injured at work when I was in 8th grade, that real bad back injury. So he lost his job. So, and by that time, I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. That time it was just myself and my mom and dad. So we moved to a small apartment a little bit further away because basically we lost the house because he lost his job.
Right.
Stayed there for about a year, and then my older sister and brother had been living in Arizona. So my mom and I went to Arizona while my dad stayed in Chicago, going through rehab and stuff. Which is funny. The first time I ever drove a car was when I was 15, and I drove it from Illinois to Arizona
Oh,
with my
wow.
mom. So
That's a good learning place
yeah,
right there. That's a big
well,
drive.
little Ford Escort drove the whole. Well, my mom drove about an hour. But she slept most of the way. But went to high school there in Phoenix, Arizona for 2 years. In my house, we knew at 18 you were out of the house. No questions asked. It doesn't matter if you had a place to live or not, you were out of the house. That was the rules. And so I couldn't afford college. Didn't have the grades for it. I had 2 jobs all the way through high school, so grades weren't, the importance at that time. So
Right.
I figured out the military will house you and feed you. So I joined the military.
Very nice. Very nice. And what was like, did you have anybody like in your family that was in the military previously or anything like that?
My dad was in the Air Force for about 4 years in Vietnam era. I don't think he was a signals intelligence guy, so he's I think he supported some of the Vietnam stuff, but never went into theater.
Right.
Obviously what they do, they sat back and listened. So
Yeah. Right. And now, what did your family think about you joining the military coming out of high school there?
needless to say, my dad was fine with it. And my mom, I was 17 when I signed up, so I needed both parents to sign. And my mom wasn't going to sign until my dad told her to. So Um, they were proud, that I was doing it, that I would have a life, not just living on the streets or out of a car or something. So they were happy I was doing something. My mom was obviously very afraid. This is in 1989. So this is,
Hmm.
it's been a peacetime for years before. I mean,
Right.
there was no concern of any combat until 91. But at that time, they were just happy that I was going to have a place to live, and I didn't even know I was going to get paid. I didn't know the military pays you.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought it was just, I just thought it was training and a place to live and food. I
Yeah.
didn't even know I didn't know I was going to have a job. My recruiter didn't tell me anything about what kind of occupation or anything I wanted. We were driving to MEPS, which is 3 months after I signed up. I waited until I graduated high school, and then we left. And he asked me, he goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I'd want to be a Marine." And he goes, "No, what kind of job you want?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He passed me the catalog while we were driving in the car, and he says, "Pick one of these jobs." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I chose a helicopter mechanic. And he
Nice.
goes, "That's great." He goes, "But we have to add another year to your enlistment because the schooling's almost a year long."
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a 5-year enlistment. And then in boot camp, I got bumped off of being an aviation mechanic. They stuck me as a diesel mechanic, but I still had to do the 5-year enlistment.
No kidding. Wow. They got you good on
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, they did. Um, but again, during that time, I did the Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm,
Yeah.
and after 5 years, I didn't have anything else to do, so I stuck around. Um,
Hmm.
Met my wife, shortly after that. I was a Lance Corporal. I met her in Hawaii. I got stationed in Japan for 18 months, then went to Hawaii, and that's where I met her. She had a 9-year-old son at the time from a previous marriage. I became a father at the age of 22 and
Nice.
got serious.
Yeah, yeah,
Got
yeah.
serious real quick.
Well, let's go back to when you take off, you fly to boot camp, and talk us through your experiences in boot camp, and what was the good and the bad for you during boot camp?
Honestly, I really did. I enjoyed it. I had structure at my house, discipline. I started working when I was, 13 years old and helped pay bills. So I
Yeah.
had a mindset already of work hard and, that's what you're supposed to do. Like I said earlier,
Hmm.
school was not an important thing. Because it just wasn't a priority because it wasn't putting food on the table. Um, so when I went to boot camp, the physical part was hard, obviously. I did play sports in high school, but it was hard. My dad told me before I left, though, he goes, it's a mental thing. It really is.
Yeah.
Um, and once I got over that part of it, I enjoyed the ease of just doing what you're told. There's no
Right.
thinking. You don't until later in life and later in, up in ranks, you don't have to think too hard. Just do what you're told, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that structure was nice, no matter how rough it was. It was really it was my pace. I mean, it was really what
Yeah.
I dug into, and I enjoyed it. I was squad leader for about an hour. Um, that was fun. Um, I I was they made it they told us at Pendleton. I don't know where you went to boot camp at, but all the mountains up there, it was Mount
Yeah.
Mother,
Yeah. Yeah.
Effer, and
Yep.
they
That's
told us at
right.
the bottom. They told us at the bottom that the first 5 people up there are going to be squad leaders and a guide.
Okay.
So I was the first one up there, one of the first ones up there. It was a squad leader, and we kept going. And about, I'd say 30 minutes after that, one of the recruits behind me tripped me, and I fell forward and fell into the captain.
Mm.
It was Captain Green, and said, "You're fired." So that was my experience as a squad leader.
Very
But
nice.
I really did enjoy it. I mean, yes, I'm not going to say it was easy, but I enjoyed the structure of it. I enjoyed getting in shape. Um, I enjoyed the camaraderie part of it. Um, I enjoyed all that. I really did.
Yeah. Very nice. And then, you said you're motor T,
Diesel mechanic. Yep.
diesel mechanic. That's what it was. So,
Yeah.
excuse me. So, after boot camp, you go MCT, correct?
Yes, that we were the
Yeah.
second company to go through MCT.
Oh, no kidding. So
Yeah,
that was fairly new at that point. So
it
yeah,
was.
talk to me a
I
little bit
think.
about that.
So I think Echo. I'm pretty sure I was. I think I was Foxtrot. Echo was the first ones through. And before we got there, they had a suicide in one of the porter johns. So that's
Oh
all we knew
no.
about. It was new infantry training for all Marines. And by the way, the company before you, the first one through, already had someone kill themselves. Um, so the mindset was kind of, what are we getting into, But we were actual
Yeah.
Marines. We're out of boot camp, actual privates and PFCs. Um, but that's where you were really not just learn more about military and tactics and survival stuff. I mean, as far as equipment and comm checks and all that stuff. But that's the first time actually an active duty Marine doing military stuff and not just being
Right.
instructed to do it or whatever. You're learning it yourself and doing it yourself. Um, and then that's where we had the 25-mile hump where that was just rough. I remember up in, I think it was Barstow where we were at. I remember waking up, after during fire watch, and I had to break my boots out of ice before I
No
could stand
kidding.
up. I mean, it was cold, cold.
Wow.
But that's where you learn the discomfort, you learn all that stuff.
Yep.
And again, I thrive in that. I really did. So
Hmm.
I was loving it still.
And how long was that?
That was, I think it's 28 days,
Okay.
20, something like that. I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very cool. But the second company to go through, that's pretty awesome. No, I mean they're still doing it today. They still got
Absolutely.
MCT
Yeah.
going today. So, and it
Yeah.
seems to work. Does everything it needs to.
And I think the
Okay.
platoon behind us in boot camp was the first platoon to get issued their dress blues. So we just missed out on that.
Oh, yeah, that's no fun.
Mhm.
So, at this point, then, now, did you go home on leave and stuff in between, like anything like that?
I did the 10-day leave. I think I did that between boot camp and MCT.
Oh, okay.
I think. If not, I might have done MCT first. And then boot camp. I can't remember
Okay.
what it was.
Nice. And you went back home and, back to Phoenix and area. Yeah,
Yeah, back to Phoenix. Yeah, I enjoyed my little time off, and now I'm a cocky Marine, and I own the
that's right.
world and all that good stuff. Yeah, it was the first time I stood up to my brother,
Oh,
who had always
nice.
been. Yeah, he was my oldest. My brother he was 6'3" ever since he was 15 years old. I was 5'9" when I graduated boot camp, and I'm 6'1" now, so I grew up afterwards. But he was always the badass, no one wanted
Yeah.
to fight him and stuff, and he'd always push me around and try to make me tougher and whatnot. And during boot camp leave, he started shit with me, and I got nose to nose with him. We brought our fists up, and he
Nice.
he stepped back and walked away, and later on told me, he said, the only reason I didn't beat your ass is because he finally stood up to me. Like, whatever.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess that works,
Yeah,
but that's a
it
good
was a big
achievement
step for
though.
and he was a hero to me. My brother was my older brother. I mean, he
Yeah.
was the one we looked up to, and it was a huge impact on my life when I finally, manned up to him. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So, talk to me about going through your training for your MOS school.
yeah, I went to Camp Johnson over there in North Carolina, right off Lejeune,
Yeah.
Lejeune, sorry, the proper way. Um, and that's the first time away from home, really, as an adult. You know what I mean?
Right.
We were at California for boot camp and MCT. It was the first time we are states away on your own. 18 years old,
Yeah.
and partying is all it was. I mean, partying and go to school. Um,
Yeah.
had some good times. Had some good training experiences.
That's good.
Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, I know I got pushed out of aviation, but when I was told I was going to be a diesel mechanic, I've always been good with my hands. Obviously, I scored high in the mechanic side of it for the
Hmm.
ASVAB, but I enjoyed the fact that I was learning a trade that I could actually use if I did get out of the service.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I got lucky. They didn't send me, to infantry, and that was my concern. I didn't care about the infantry part as far as the workload, if you will. But I knew there was really nothing I could do outside in the
Hmm.
civilian world if I got out. So I'm glad
Yeah.
I appreciated the fact that I was able to learn a trade, and I still use it
Hmm.
today. I do mechanic stuff all the time for fun. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely comes in handy. That's for sure. And then the school itself was like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that.
I want to say it was 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thinking way back, I want to say it was 3 months. Um, let's see, because August '89, I graduated in November. That was the other thing. Our graduation was November 10th, so we had to stay in boot camp for an extra week because they didn't have graduation that day.
Oh,
So
nice.
14 weeks. I was in boot camp for 14 weeks. And then so that was November. November. Yeah, because I left school and flew to Okinawa in May of '89.
Okay.
So January, February, March. Yeah, 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. And then, so your first duty station is Okinawa, Japan. And before you flew to Okinawa, Japan, had you ever been out of the country?
Never. No, no,
So
that
this
was
is going to
huge.
be a big jump for you, going to another country. So what
Well,
was that like? What was going through your mind for that?
they told us when picking locations, they said that eventually you're going to get told to go to Okinawa.
Yeah.
And I was, I didn't have a wife or anything at the time, didn't have a family, so I figured, I should knock this out right away. So I'm going to go anyway. I can,
Hmm.
excuse me, I can plan this one. So let's go. I
Right.
was obviously I don't want to say afraid, but I was excited and anxious because I had no idea
Yeah.
what a different country would be like. And I mean, I was a stupid high school kid, so I had no idea about Japan or the
Hmm.
cultures or the demographics and stuff like that. I had no idea. Um, and when I got there, it was kind of neat. When I first arrived, I kind of another kind of short story. Arrived there on I want to say it was May 31st of 1989, but I didn't know about the time change, so I put my arrival date as June 1st. And then, sure enough, the Gulf War kicked off in '90, right? Or they started, ramping up for it in '90, and they made a 6 month automatic extension for anybody who got there on June 1st or later.
Oh no.
Yeah. So all my buddies that flew in with me on May 31st went home after a year, and I stayed in Japan for an extra 6 months because of that mistake I made on the paperwork.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, got extra six. I got punished for an extra 6 months. Um, but it was fine. I mean, I enjoyed it over there. I didn't come home with a wife named Rose or anything, but had we had a good time over there. I could obviously legally
Yeah.
drink, so that was fun.
Oh, that's right. 18 was the drinking age back then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah,
And now what was like did you go out experience the culture? Were you out in town doing those types of things?
I did. I spent a lot of time. Uh, I was 18, 19 years old. All I did was drink and fight. But that's how the culture was very. Um, I loved it. I mean, it was new. It was new and exciting. I really wish I would have learned the language more. But I had a lot of interaction with locals,
Hmm.
whether it be bartenders or whatever. I still had I had communication with them, so it was really neat. And then working the relationships and the languages barriers, doing the sign language and stuff, trying to describe things and whatnot.
Right.
It's kind of neat. It was just interacting with the completely. It's not like being in the United States where you have a Hispanic speaking English, doesn't speak English. It wasn't like that. It was a foreign country, and it
Yeah.
just the whole environment and demographic was different. Um, you realize how small you really are in
Hmm.
life. I mean, how minute you really are, or we are as a nation as well. Um, but yeah, I really did enjoy it and learning different cultures.
Yeah. And then now did you deploy while you were there, like go on ship, anything like that?
And see, the 18 months I was there, We went to field training is really all we did up in I think it was NTA and Camp Schwab, and I lived at every single
Mm-hmm.
base in Okinawa pretty much. I got originally assigned to service company at Camp Courtney, and then about a week
Mm-hmm.
later got sent to a truck company at Camp Hansen, and then I was TAD. So when the war kicked off, they were looking for they reached out to Third Marines Truck Company, looking for Marines to get sent up to Camp Schwab as mechanics to go deploy with the infantry.
Mm.
And uh, I remember Corporal Coletti was his name, and Warrant Officer Bynum, Chief Warrant Officer Bynum. They said that we didn't have any Marines that are all accounted for as far as training or whatever. And Corporal Coletti said, "No, Bunetto's still in the barracks right in the Quonset huts right now." And he's like, "What do you mean? He's supposed to be at the range." He goes, "Well, he came in drunk and missed the bus." So I was still passed out in the Quonset huts, and they came and woke me up and said, "Well, you're not going to get a page 11 or anything, but you are going to get TAD to go for." So I was like, "So my punishment for that, for being drunk and missing the bus was going to war." So
Wow.
so I got TAD'd up to Camp Schwab, the first AAV battalion. And from
Okay.
there, they attached me to Fourth Marine Tows, the tow platoon,
Oh, yeah.
Camp Schwab, and that's who I deployed with to in the Gulf War. I was a mechanic for the Fourth Marine Tow platoon.
Oh, wow.
So
So you deployed from Okinawa to Desert Storm.
yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Very cool.
And then
Well,
after that, returned to Japan. Had a few more months there before I left, and then I got orders to Hawaii.
okay. Well, talk
So
me
one
through
rock to the next.
talk me through your experience deploying with the unit, like what was going through. I mean, that was the first time the America had been to war in a long time, right? So what was
Yes,
kind of going through
absolutely.
everyone's mind?
Uh, Scare. I mean, fear. I mean, we didn't know. I mean, we heard a lot of stuff about the Saddam army, how large it
Hmm.
was. We also knew, I mean, 19 years old, I didn't know about him, but the discussions and stuff, the talks were out there. They knew how crazy he was, that he would use chemical weapons. Um, so yeah, and you carry your gas mask with you everywhere you go. So there's always a in the back of your mind. And I did actually learn out there that's when I learned the phrase that fear is worse than fear. Fear is worse than death itself. I mean, fear of death is worse than death itself. So
Right.
there's you hear the stories in boot camp about it, and it actually happens where you gotta. There was 12 of us, three mechanics, um, that are attached to the Fourth Wing Tows, and we traveled. We each got our own truck, and we drove north all night long. Um, I mean, only at like 4 miles an hour, and at nighttime. And all they had was
Nice.
they had a chem light. They have a chem light on the back of each truck, and that's all you used for visibility was a chem light on the truck in front of you. So it was a constant speed up, slow down, because you couldn't see the chem light to the last minute. You had to slam the brakes, and it was. I'm not lying. We were probably traveling maybe tops 7 miles an hour for hours
Wow.
and hours. And then we're in the oil field. I remember the windshield wipers smearing oil on the windshield because it was just liquid in the air. I mean,
No
you couldn't
kidding.
see your hand in front of your face. I mean, it was nothing but black. I have a flag that I had sticking on my truck that I still have, and it's got the oil spots all over it. But
Huh.
that's what you're breathing, and it was, that was scary too.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
and let me back up because I started saying I skipped off of it, but the 12 of us were sleeping, foot to foot, a circle, where we just wake up and do fire watch and then lay down. You wake the guy
Hmm.
up next to you, and there's a huge explosion. And we'd had explosions before where you run to the bunkers and stuff, but this one we were out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a huge explosion, and the camp that was next to us, because we were outside the camp, started honking their horns 3 times, yelling gas, gas, gas. And we
Oh
all
no.
woke up and sat and just stared at each other, put our gas masks on, and that's when you learn you can't fight. There's nothing to shoot at. There's no enemy standing there to shoot
Yeah.
back at you or you shoot to them. You can't kill that threat. And then so you just sitting there waiting, and then it comes where it's just like they taught in boot camp, where the lowest man on the totem pole pulls off your
Yeah.
mask. And then you see if they're going to die or not before,
Right.
clearing. So we sat there and I was the second one. So the first one pulled off his mask and everybody was fine. But, the number one in my mind, I'm like, okay, this guy's going to pull his mask off and we're going to see blisters and we're going to see, breathing and
Right.
dying and everything. And then we have to wait longer, then I got to do it,
Yeah.
so again, that fear is there and there's nothing to punch or hit or shoot. There's nothing you can do. So that's where I learned that, the fear of death is worse than death itself. You just don't
Yeah.
know. And that was my real first awakening of, this is real shit. So,
Yeah. For
but
sure.
thank God it was clear. Nothing happened, there was no attack or anything. So that was good.
Wow.
But we finished the mission, and we were the first motor unit into Kuwait. We're the first ones to go through the minefield,
Oh,
which
it wasn't, no kidding.
we all each had our own 5-ton truck. I was the second truck going through, and the guy in front of me was carrying all the ammunition, all the missiles and ammunition and all that stuff.
Oh,
So obviously we gave him a lot of lead. But the minefield, when they would shoot can't remember what they're called. They shoot the rockets out and they land and then they blow up. It's like
right.
a strip blown up. They did that, and then it left a bunch of mogul type holes. I mean,
Hmm.
like hills, just like on a motorcycle track deal. So you're bouncing all over, and you had just enough room to see the edge of the trail. And the rest of it was minefield. I mean, you can
Oh
see
my
the
God.
mines sticking up all over the place. So you can just ride at the edge, and you have no A driver to see where you're at on that side. So
Yeah.
it was scary. It really was. Um, and
Wow.
then we were in Kafji where we had an attack over there. I think some of the tows killed some tanks. We got hit with friendly Air Force fire artillery, so that was fun. No one got hurt, but we're running around from cluster bombs getting dropped on us. So
Oh my God.
good training.
Yeah, yeah,
Training.
that's it. Holy
Yeah.
cow. That's
So
pretty
then back to
wild.
Hawaii, or back to Okinawa, then sent to Hawaii.
Okay, very nice. I interviewed an individual that he was in the Navy, so he was a Navy corpsman that deployed, and I thought he deployed from Okinawa, but I'm not 100% certain. So he might, I mean, what you're saying sounds very familiar to what he had said with the minefield and all that stuff. So who knows, man? He could have been in your unit.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very wild. I'll have to look. I'll have to get all his info and stuff and see if you know him.
Yeah.
Sorry, I sidetracked there. Uh, the
So, it's funny, real quick on that. I always I'd like to tell the story because the flight over there, they had beer. I mean, we
Yeah.
flew on a civilian flight. We had our M16s with us. I think I had a fifth of Bacardi with me.
Oh
Um,
no.
I we ran out. So every time they give us a beer, I would hide it and sip on my Bacardi. And I had like 14 beers hidden up, on me and around me in my bags and stuff, and they ran out of beer. So I
Oh wow.
finished, got a little bit tipsy, whatever, fell asleep, woke up, and I started cracking open these beers. And I'm like, "Where are you getting the beer?" I was like, I saved it from earlier. But I actually have a pic. I have a picture of myself holding my 9 mil to the back of the pilot. He let me do it.
Really?
Yes, I
Oh
actually have. I can.
wow.
You might.
That's
I can
pretty
go grab it real
wild.
quick. Let me see. Let me see.
Yeah.
Like I think I know exactly where it's at. Can I jump out and check
Oh,
it
yeah, go ahead, man.
and
Go
see if I
ahead.
showed you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's awesome. Well,
I
that
thought it
was
was
really
fun.
cool that they let you do that. That's wild.
Yeah. Well, and that's before 9/11, obviously. But can you
Yeah,
imagine
yeah,
after 9/11 doing? Hey, do you
yeah.
mind if I
Oh
pull my
yeah.
9 mil out? So yeah, that was an
Yeah.
interesting story. I love that picture because people are like, "Are you serious?" Anyway,
Yeah, that's
sorry.
pretty interesting. No,
Yeah,
no, no
bringing back some
problem.
memories.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what this is for. It's all good. Oh man. Okay, so you finish the deployment, come back to Okinawa, and at that point is when you got the orders to Hawaii. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Got to
Yeah.
Warhorse, Hawaii. ended up being 4.5 years over in Hawaii. I went originally to MWSS 174, Marine
Hmm.
Aviation Wing Squadron, whatever. I was a mechanic for them, and that's where I got attached to rear area security for the base, and that's how I got to go to the School of Infantry um, as a corporal. Went to School of Infantry.
Oh, wow.
Enjoyed that. Oh man, I loved it because I mean, as a mechanic, you don't get that opportunity. You don't get the fast rope, doing urban mount training.
Yeah.
Um, all that stuff. So had a great time doing that, learning that. Let's see.
Now,
From there, I
now,
got
were you going there specifically to switch MOSs to infantry or
oh not at all.
no?
So rear area security for the base, they all they have to. There's not a whole lot of infantry at Cape Bay in
Gotcha.
Hawaii. So they train up a certain amount of Marines to be a rear in case something happens. You have to be
Right.
security, so they want to teach us the infantry side of it. Um, so you got to learn all the tactics and everything from an
Hmm.
infantry standpoint. And then from there, I got TAD'd over to 112 for artillery battalion,
Yep.
mechanic for them. Went to a couple PTAs, kind of like some cat. They're like CACs, only it's a Paklua
Hmm.
training area. It's just in Hawaii. Was actually part of at the time was top secret exercise where the CIA came in. Our job was to um, if we were seen to just stay still, that we're supposed to let them know we caught the CIA. We're supposed to let them know, hey, we heard you or see you just for training purposes. But there was actually live round training where when they started shooting, you had to sit still because they're going to be shooting around you at certain targets.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was Operation Charlie Eclipse, is what they called it. I was actually in the back of the Humvee with a couple of CIA agents. I could probably recognize one of them today if I saw him after all these years, just because I
Yeah.
stared at him. I just stared and tried to get every detail I could from him. But yeah, it was live training stuff that we just sat. We couldn't shoot back or nothing. We just had to stop where we're
Yeah.
at, sit down, and wait till it was over. But yeah, that was we didn't know that was going to happen. So that was interesting. Um,
Wow.
so then I deployed to Japan from with 112. They had a deployment to Japan, went to Iwakuni,
Hmm.
and then came back to Hawaii and in 1993, and that's when I met my wife right at the end of 93, 94,
Okay.
beginning of 94. So
Now, how'd you end up meeting her? It was just kind of like out in town type of deal or what?
came back from a deployment and went to a bar and playing pool and met her. It was so I was with one of my corpsmen. I always learned you keep friends with corpsmen. Never
Yeah.
leave. You always have a corpsman with you everywhere you go. Um, but I met her and her friend were there. She was a nurse at the time. Played some pool. She gave me her phone number, and then that was it. And I didn't call
Yeah.
her anything. A couple weeks later, we were at the base at country night, music night at the base at the E Club, and she showed up there. I mean, I didn't know she was going to be there, but she showed up there, and we bumped into each other, and I played the whole "I'm sorry, I forgot your number, couldn't call you" kind of thing. And she still makes fun of me today. Her phone number was 26 26 26 26 3.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 26 26 263. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I kind
Uh,
of boned that one up.
yeah, no kidding.
Um, so after that, I went on a date with her, and then we shoot moved in together within 2 weeks and got married 6 months later and been married 30 years. So
Holy cow, man, that is awesome. You don't
yeah,
see nowadays, you don't see people sticking it out and staying married that long. It's
no,
kind of
no.
rare.
Or
So,
actually, back then too, you had to go through a chaplain to get approved, well, to get
yeah.
recommended. They couldn't deny you, but they could recommend you or not. And they didn't. He didn't recommend that I get married to her. So
No kidding.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's insane. But you went ahead and did
yeah,
it and worked out for the best. So
yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
So once you got married, now how long did you stay in Hawaii? You said it was like 4.5 years, right?
Yeah, I was there till June of '95. So I was there
Okay.
4.5 years, and then I'm young enough. I didn't know about monitors, MOS monitors. I didn't know about anything like that. I just started asking
Right.
my staff NCOs. And I'm like, well, how long do I stay here? I mean, how long do I have to stay in Hawaii? And they said, well, about every 3 years is when you start rotating this, that, and the other. And I said, I've been here 4.5. And they're like, well, you need to call your monitor. So I called my monitor and he goes, well, there's an opening in Lubbock, Texas for I&I staff. So I did some research and found out what I&I staff was, inspector, instructor,
Right.
trainer, reservist. And I said, at least it's back in the United States, right?
Yeah.
I've never been to Texas before. My wife, obviously, I told you she's from Oklahoma, or high school in Oklahoma. And she
Hmm.
said I would love Texas. So um, we flew down here in June of '95, and we arrived in Texas, in Lubbock, Texas. Are my dogs too loud back there?
No, I don't even hear them. You're good.
Okay. We arrived on Flag Day in Lubbock,
Oh, no
Texas.
kidding.
So in Lubbock, in a lot of cities like this, but Lubbock, every single house has a flag. There's actually a company that goes out and puts flags in every single house.
Wow.
So keep in mind, I just spent the last almost 6 years in overseas, and I don't
Hmm.
care who you are. At least back then, Hawaii, you'd be lucky if you saw the U.S. flag hanging somewhere outside the base. Um,
Right.
we had Marines that were jumped and beaten out there just because they were Americans. Um,
Hmm.
so very unpatriotic, at least at the time. This is, and maybe it changed. I don't know. But I just spent the 6 years, on an island. So
Yeah.
driving back in and seeing all these flags, it just resonated with me. I fell in love.
Hmm.
So I got stationed there in Lubbock, Texas, and I was on I&I duty for 3 years. Um,
Now, what types of
that
things
was
did you
probably
do while you were on I&I duty? Because not everybody kind of
that's
sees that
aside
side of
from
the house.
yeah. So aside from combat, I&I duty I think is the hardest duty in the military. And I know I'm going to offend people, but I don't think drill instructors is a hard duty. I would love to be on a 3 year planned, scheduled deployment, telling 18-year-old kids who are scared to death what to do every day. I would love a job telling 18-year-old kids who's going to do whatever you tell them. There's no fighting
Yeah.
back. There's no arguing. There's no questioning. It's you do it, you do it. I don't see the hard part in that. I
Yeah.
don't. Not to knock anybody's. I mean, drill instructors are needed, but I always battled with that of how much recognition they get when. Can you imagine having a job for 3 years, knowing exactly where you're going to be in 2 months, what duty you're going to have in 2.5 months? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? What days you're going to work? You don't get the schedule like that in the fleet. You don't get
Hmm.
the. You have no idea what the next day is going to be in the fleet.
Yeah.
Um,
Very true.
but on I duty, you're trying to convince a CEO of a company who makes six figures a year to do something on a weekend that they know if they don't do it, come Monday they're back at work. It There's no punishment. They
Yeah.
can take off their uniform, they can take off their blouse and cover, walk across the street, smoke a cigarette, and drink a beer across the street from the reserve center after hours, and you can't even correct them. You can't do anything.
Uh,
Convincing those people
wow.
to do their job is hard to do,
Yeah,
and keeping them
I can
motivated.
see that. Yeah, I can see that.
And they question, they fight back, they do all that stuff. And
Wow.
then because of the staff size, so as a sergeant, I was the assistant maintenance chief, I was the operations chief, I was the training NCO, I was the armorer, I was the communications NCO, I was I did modifications, publications, I was the impact card holder, I did the honor guards for Toys for Tots and funerals. I think that's it. That
Yeah,
was my job.
that's quite a bit on one individual. And
Yeah,
what rank were you at this point?
I was a sergeant.
Sergeant. That's a lot to put on a sergeant's plate.
Yeah. And it was the best duty I've ever had because I learned not every single, but almost every MOS that there is, other than
Yeah,
doing admin, which you learn admin just because you're taking care of your own stuff, and you got to
right.
teach your Marines how to do it. But I mean, I was like I said, the armor. I did communications. I knew, it was just a great rounding, um, just a full gamut of Marine Corps and career, if you will.
Right.
So I don't regret any of it. It was one of the reasons I had gotten out. Well, a couple of reasons I got out. I did a break in service. So in
Hmm.
98, I had come home, and I was tired. I was exhausted. And I told my wife, I said, I am beaten. She goes, she goes, what's wrong? She goes, I told her, I said, I worked about 25 hours overtime this
Yeah.
week. And she goes, what are you talking about? And I said, I worked about, 110 hours. And
Yeah.
she goes, honey, the average work week is 40 hours a week. And I'm
Hmm.
like, what? So for 9 years, I thought the average work week was 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
That was my norm. 80 was norm. 80 was a good pace. I mean, and
Right.
then I find out that I've been working 2 weeks at a time every week. So I started contemplating what I was doing, and then I had knee surgery, a reconstruction knee surgery. So I was fighting
Hmm.
physical. Um, my stepson at the time was going to one of the best high schools in Texas, getting associate's degree as a junior and senior in high school.
Wow.
And my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer, and
Hmm.
he and my mother-in-law lived 5 houses down from us in Lubbock. So I made a decision then to get out,
Hmm.
just so we can take care of the family. And I didn't want my kid leaving high school or leaving that school.
Yeah.
Um, so I got out, and at that time, my wife and I were driving, trying to decide what I'm going to do, when I get out of the service. And she goes, "What about fire department?" And I said, "That's not a bad idea." And she goes, "Well, the police department was recruiting up the mall the other day." So I went up there and got a package and filled out the application and got hired from the Lubbock Police Department.
No
Um,
kidding. Nice.
yeah, I did. I had 3 months of waiting in between the service time and the start of the academy. So I
Hmm.
worked at a liquor store, um, a drive-through
That's a
liquor store that
convenient.
my buddy owned.
That's a convenient place. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But so when I got out in November of '98, I was staff select.
Hmm.
So it was hard to get out,
Yeah.
becoming a staff sergeant. So I was still sergeant, but I was a staff select in November. So I went and did IRR, inactive reserve, so I could stay on contract, and I got my
Mm.
E6 warrant in the mail. So I got
Nice.
promoted
Okay.
as an IRR. So I was actually an E6. Um, and I did went to the academy, became a police officer. You know, did some narcotic stuff, did some SWAT stuff, and then 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Actually, about 2 years after the academy, or after I was a police officer, I started getting that itch about two and a half years about wanting to move
Hmm.
again, do something different because it's every 3 years it's in your blood.
Yeah.
And so I told my wife, and my son had graduated. At this time, my father-in-law had passed away. My mother, actually, I need to back up. My mother passed away in '98 after I got back from Hawaii from cancer, and then it was my father-in-law. Um, and then so both of my parents, all four of them died in 4.5 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it was back to back. So that after they had all passed and my son had graduated, I wasn't, I didn't have we didn't have anything holding us down anymore. And I always had that sense of not finishing my job in the military because I did not do 20. And I
Yeah.
thought I was quitting. I thought I quit the country when I got out. So I started the paperwork of going back in. I submitted everything. Um, and the final paperwork went through to the recruiter. And the day after is when 9/11 happened.
No kidding.
So I woke up to 9/11 and said, I think this is the right move. So
Yeah.
um, it took about 2 years to get back in after that. Actually, about a year after
Wow.
that, the headquarters Marine Corps sent a message and saying, we're not going to take you back in. We appreciate you this, that, and the other. So I went full speed. I told my wife, I said, I tried. That's all I can do. They didn't
Hmm.
want me back. So I went full speed police department. And that's where I went to SWAT school and um,
Yeah.
started just doing everything police. And then a year later, they sent me a contact me and said, "Are you still trying to get in?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. You told me I can't get in. I don't know who told you that, but we're ready to send you orders." And I'm like, "What's going on?" So I told my wife, I said, "I'm sorry, but we're changing gears again." But this time when I went back in, I studied for the ASVAB and I got the 0231 intelligence MOS.
Nice. Okay.
So an old first sergeant of mine sat me down and said, "Do it smart this time."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
That's
got orders and I went back to the Marine Corps in January of '03. Went to Virginia and got
No
my,
kidding.
became an intelligence analyst.
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool. And not a bad job either.
No,
That's pretty good job. So
except for the
now,
fact, go ahead.
no, go ahead, finish what you're gonna say.
So the biggest, so as a staff NCO, you're the expert in your MOS,
Right,
right? You're the SME, you're special matter expert. I not only was a staff sergeant going to my first unit, I didn't know shit about I mean, what you get taught in MOS school is not how you do things, no
right.
matter what MOS it is, right? Whether mechanic or
Mm-hmm.
not, they teach you the basics, the tools to use, but that's not how you run everything.
Right.
So I got to my first unit, which was VMA 214, the Black Sheep Squadron in Yuma, Arizona. And
Mm-hmm.
then a few months after that, I got TAD to 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and went to Ramadi, Iraq. So
No kidding.
within 6 months of me becoming a staff NCO intelligence analyst, I was in a combat zone. Um,
Wow.
and that deployment, we had more wounded and killed than any American battalion since Vietnam.
What was
So
that? You said what? 03? Oh
oh
four?
04 in
Oh four?
Ramadi, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines.
And God, I was in Ramadi as well around that time. I was on Blue Diamond. Where exactly were you at?
I was at Hurricane Point,
Oh yeah.
right across
Okay.
the river, right across the river from you.
That's right. Yeah. And
Yeah,
we heard you guys were in all the time. I mean that you guys were getting hit constantly.
we'll say it's one of the, like I said, just the battles there were nonstop. Like you said, it was.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wow.
that was my first job as an intelligence chief, being a staff NCO and in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the shit in combat. And it's very humbling. And fortunately, I'm not trying to brag, but I am a humble person when it comes to, if I don't know it, I have no problem asking. Um,
Yeah.
that's the way it is. So I didn't fight it, and I pulled my lance corporals and NCOs, pulled them aside and said, "Here's the thing, my job." Because they knew my situation. They knew that I was a brand new
Mm-hmm.
staff NCO. I just went to the MO school. I said, my job is going to be keeping the lieutenant and the S2 off your back.
Yeah.
That's my job. I'm going to buffer anything that comes down. I'm going to take the blame for anything. You guys just do your job,
Mm-hmm.
and teach me as we do it. But you're going to run the show, right? You're
Right.
going to make sure the shit gets done. I'm going to make sure that no one stops you from doing it. That's all I can do. So that was my thing. I mean, I kept the S3 chief, the ops chief off their backs. I did everything I
Mm-hmm.
could just to push everybody away to let them do their jobs. And this being over there in Blue Diamond, then this is when the
Yeah.
intel started doing the every Marine a collector. And
Mm-hmm.
they sent one intel Marine down to actually boots on the ground with the infantry and went on patrols with them,
Right.
teaching the infantry how to do, collections. So I had one
Yeah.
Marine at each company out
Mm.
inside, um, outside of Vermont, outside of Hurricane Point. They lived out in the
Yeah.
fobs with you know, and that was hard because I didn't have control of my Marines out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's very difficult. And then we had one of our intel Marines inside Ramadi, doing the road run. You know, we didn't have the internet, so we had to do our intel by thumb drive.
Yeah.
And it was old intel, but it was also
Mm-hmm.
had to be driven by convoy. So I
Right.
had one of my Marines who was in probably 6 different convoys that were hit by IEDs. Yeah. So
Wow.
he never got wounded, but it was just crazy. And every time he went out, I'm like, oh my God, please don't die. Please don't die. Um, but anyway, so that was my first experience as an intelligence chief.
Man.
Uh,
Yeah, and what an experience, or what a good way to learn. Bad way, good way. I don't know which way you want to say it, but you definitely are going to learn when you're actually in combat doing the job.
Actually got my ass chewed out by the ops chief because I kicked Oliver North out of the command center, the command operations center, the COC. Oliver North came in there with one of his sidekicks, and I said, "Get the fuck out of here." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "You don't have a clearance to be in here. At least I haven't seen it yet." And Major Wiley jumped my shit. He goes, "You know who that is?" I said, "I don't care who it is. He's got a guy with a camera coming in the COC. It's not going to happen. We're going to sanitize this first. I don't give a shit at all. But and
Yeah.
Oliver North and he and I talked after that. And he goes, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I did intel myself. I said I should have let you know I was coming in. But I was like, what? Nah. Anyway,
Oh, that's pretty
that's a
wild.
what are you doing? But
That's awesome. All right. So, and you were there for how long? 7 months, 8 months?
it was about that one there was about 8 months, 8 or 9 months, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then after that, where did you end up coming back? So where did you end up going and stuff?
So I went back to California and helped set up the. I came back advance party because one of my NCOs won an intelligence award. So we flew back with him so we could get the award. But I set up the rear or set up the shops until everybody got back. The main body got there, and
Hmm.
the main body got back about 3 days after I shipped back to my original unit in Yuma.
Oh, no
Um,
kidding. Wow.
so that was a dynamic in itself.
Yeah.
Um, because I had nobody in Yuma that deployed and saw combat.
Yeah.
So and there was no one to share stories with or no one to talk to. Um,
Hmm.
it was rough. Um, that
And
was a
then
very
not
like I
to,
said, it was what's that?
I said, not to mention when you got back, and you leave 3 days before they show back up, you didn't have that time to really vent, right? To talk about your experiences and get some of that off your chest.
Was like I said, it tore me up a lot of it because I just had to keep it in.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, even the infantry's got it like I mean, they're not going to talk to anybody unless it's infantry. They're not going to talk about shit that
Hmm.
happened unless it was one of their own. Well, when you go to a Marine Corps air station, there's no one there,
Yeah.
that knew, especially in '04.
Hmm.
But see, that
Yeah.
was a
But
that was
it's
a tough
fairly
one.
new. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I got sent back to, like I said, VMA 214, and then about that was in the end of '04,
Hmm.
and then I was stayed there for a little bit, and then got TAD back to. They were putting together the MIT teams, the military
Hmm.
instruction teams for the Iraqi Army.
Yeah.
Volunteered for that, and I was on in Iraq January of '06.
Okay.
So got back in '04, just about a year, and then so I got TAD to do that. Um, and I was going to be the senior enlisted on that one. I was still a staff sergeant, but I think I was Gunny select at that time, or getting ready to get Gunny. But there was
Okay.
12 of us on that deployment. I did intel, and I was also one of the company advisors. That was probably the hardest deployment out of all. Um,
Yeah.
I've got over 500 miles of foot patrols out there. Every day we went at least one patrol, if not two, and it was just we go out there with
Wow.
one other American and then about 12 Iraqi soldiers. Um, and then we just lived out in the house out in town. There was
Yeah.
four houses that we just had Constantine had HESCO barriers around, and
Hmm.
we lived in the house with the Iraqi soldiers.
No
Um,
kidding. And
and so
what part of Iraq?
and that was in right north of Haditha. It's Al Jazeera is what they call it because it's an open land, but it's between Ramadi and Fallujah, just north of the
Okay.
Euphrates.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
it's like halfway between. Um, but yeah, you had to go through a river to get there. Um,
Hmm.
the army had their river boat set up, the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
They would
Yeah.
set up their bridge, which was nice because anytime the commandant or sergeant major or all those guys that wanted to pretend that they were in combat wanted to come out and see us, they had to go through the boat first, so we had time to square things away before they showed up.
Yeah.
Um, because they got to visit, say they were there, so they can get their combat
Yeah.
actions and their bronze stars. So
Right. Right. Right.
yeah, it's so funny.
Good times.
Um, but my guys had, I mean, we had long mustaches, we had unshaven, we wore green camis. We were the only at the time we were the only ones wearing green camis. It was a vegetated area with trees and everything. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
um, but yeah, didn't blouse our boots, that kind of stuff, because it was just 4 or 5 homes wrapped around, surrounded by some HESCO barriers, and you're living with Iraqi
Right.
soldiers. We had no American support. It was an Iraqi battalion.
Wow.
So you had to, we didn't. anytime we wanted got any type of American food, our supply officer had to go back to meth forward, which is 13 clicks south of us,
Yeah.
to try to scrounge and get some steaks or something like that. But we lived off of eggs and chickens and some goats and fish. That's what we ate, and
No
beans.
kidding.
Usually it was just beans and rice. It was mainly what we ate. And then obviously if someone, family would send donuts or, candy or something like that, that's what we ate. But other than that,
Right.
it was Iraqi food. Um,
Man, that's
uh,
insane.
it was a tough deployment, but it was just so rewarding. I was assigned to their sergeant major, who was actually a sergeant major with the old Iraqi regime.
Hmm.
And we knew about it, and we learned that the enlisted Iraqi soldiers didn't mean shit. They didn't have any say in anything.
Hmm.
Even the sergeant majors didn't have any say. They just
Really?
were in charge of the list. Yeah, it's just they didn't have any type of authority. And we went we would have the commanders, the company commanders were all lieutenants or captains, and then our staff, which was all officers except for 4 or 5 enlisted, we would sit
Hmm.
down for the battalion meetings, the planning for the next day, this, training or whatever. And the sergeant major wasn't even allowed in that meeting.
No
Um,
kidding.
nope. And then we started training and teaching them westernizing how, important it is that the senior enlisted be involved. And a year later, when we left there, the sergeant major was running some of those meetings, even with the lieutenants in the meetings, the company advisors, he was telling them what's going to happen. So the dynamic changed
Wow.
throughout the year we were there. And it was just phenomenal to see them grow. We taught them how to, call for fire. And they actually did call for fire in some cases.
Yeah.
We actually took them up in a helicopter and did some patrols where, every patrol is outside the wire, but we actually
Hmm.
set up a couple of helicopter ones where we flew out, and got dropped off the Iraqi soldiers with us.
Yeah.
They got to first time ever being in any type of, helicopter or plane. It was kind of neat for these guys. Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, it was a
Holy cow.
great deployment, but
Yeah, that's incredible. Man,
part of the largest medevac since Vietnam.
really?
Yeah.
Holy
So
cow. Wow. Well, that deployment in itself is I don't know. I don't think I could have done it, but
couldn't sleep with
kudos
a
to
nine
you for
mil
doing it.
loaded underneath your pillow every night.
Yeah. Yeah, because you never know. You never know. It's just you and one other
Well, the
guy,
Iraqis,
you know.
well, the Iraqi soldiers, you couldn't trust them, and you didn't know.
Yeah.
You had to trust
Yeah.
them basically. But
Yeah. Holy cow. All right, so you after that deployment, you come back and what was the scheme of maneuver for you at that point?
we came back, and then again back to Yuma, Arizona now. And they stuck me up at Mag 13 because I was a gunnery sergeant. I got promoted out there in Iraq. I was a gunnery sergeant. Went to Mag 13, which is the group that VMA 214 falls under, and
Hmm.
got orders to the 24th MU in
Okay.
Lejeune as the intel chief for them. Uh, our first deployment with them was in 2008 in Afghanistan, and it was they pretty much they sized us up to about the size of a meth. Um, we were, I want to say, almost 3,500 strong, I think, when we went there.
Wow.
A MEB, sorry, Expeditionary Brigade. I was the intel chief for them. Uh, did 9 months, I think, out there in that one. Um, oh, that was that was interesting. But anyway, that was then I left there and went back to 24th MU again, stayed with them for
Hmm.
another year. And then we did 2010, we went out and did Operation the Haiti, and then did some supporting operations for various countries while on
Yeah.
sea, intel wise, So
Right, right, right.
we
Wow.
supported some Afghanistan, but we also did some stuff in other countries. You know.
Right.
And then
Now,
came back. Go
when
ahead.
you went to Afghanistan, were you actually boots on the ground in Afghanistan?
Yes, we
Yeah.
actually they canceled we're supposed to be on ship obviously for MU,
Hmm.
but they canceled that and sent us straight into the Iraq or Afghanistan, and we set up on boots on the ground.
And
Right
where
in Kandahar is where we were set up
Kandahar.
at.
Okay.
We helped establish that, and then we helped establish Bastion, I think it was. Now it's called Leatherneck,
Hmm.
or not
Yeah.
now. I don't know what it's called, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. Wow. So one, two, three, four deployments total at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I call the one in '06 too, because I did 6 months and came home for 15 days R&R and then went back for 6 months. So I call that two deployments.
Yeah, I
So
can
I
see
technically
that.
say
Yeah.
five
Yeah.
all the time cause I actually did six, came home, went back. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, four official.
Right. 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 Wow, man. And then, so at this point, you're gunny. Are you looking at promotion to mass sergeant? Like, what was going on there?
Yep. So I was first of all I got promoted out of the blow zone for gunny.
Wow.
So I got
Nice.
that early. And then when I came back from the second deployment uh, from Afghanistan, I got promoted out of the blow zone for master sergeant.
Wow.
Um,
Good for
yeah,
you, man. That's awesome.
I've always been proud of that, because not only, one time is rare, and I got it twice. So
Yeah.
I've always been proud of that. And then I left. I actually got the day I left Lejeune, the 24th MU, is the day I pinned on. It was just right before my major came out to the rear gate with me and my wife. I was, I had my car was packed up. I was ready to drive off, so he pinned it on, and then I drove off. And
Wow.
there's no formation, no nothing.
Yeah.
But I showed up. I got orders to Marine MOTS 1 in Yuma, Arizona, the Marine Aviation Weapons and Tactics
Okay.
Squadron, uh, and as the intel chief instructor there. That was in 2010. We made strides, and they may have changed it by now, but I spearheaded the program to get Intel Marines certifications through MOTS to be a certified
Oh, wow.
intelligence
Yeah.
instructors. And as far as I knew, it was happening. So I hope it did. But I retired in 2012, and I was already looking at Master Gunnery Sergeant after 2 years being a Master Sergeant.
Yeah. That
And
seems about right. That the
yeah,
time between master sergeant and master gunnery sergeant seems to be really quick. That was for me at
yeah,
least. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
And
wild.
I, I was, I knew that I wanted to go back to being a police officer.
Hmm.
Um, so had I stayed to get selected in 2012, I'd have been 2 more years. And remember, I had 40 years in service, and I would have been 46 or 44, 45-ish, and then go back to being a
Yeah.
police officer. So I didn't take that any further. I just stayed as master sergeant. In 2020, I retired and became a police officer again in Sherman, Texas.
And okay,
So
so did you retire at 20 years or did
yeah,
22?
just over 20. Yeah, it's
Just
20.
over 20?
I
Okay.
call it 20. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
and
Man,
then I
that's
had
pretty good though.
during my terminal leave, I was in the police academy in Sherman, Texas.
Okay.
So
Very nice. And then yeah, and that's where you are now?
I'm actually, yeah, I mean, I'm in the same place. I'm like 15 minutes southeast of Sherman, a little town called
Yeah,
White
yeah.
Wright. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
But you're
I
still
retired.
with the
No, I did.
police department?
I actually retired in 2020 using military time. So I did a total of about 12 years in the police department and used military time to get a second retirement. So,
What? That's awesome.
yep, yep.
Yeah, that's a good deal. So now you're just kind of chilling out and just enjoying the
Well,
retired life.
yeah, I'm helping a buddy of mine who owns a land acquisitions development company and construction company. I'm doing paperwork for him and helping keep things organized and structured. Um, but yeah, work out of my house, and if I need to do something, I do something. If I don't, I'm good. I play hockey every Sunday. That's my hobby. Um,
Now you do
so
ice hockey or you
ice
roller
hockey, yeah,
hockey? Ice hockey, yeah.
ice hockey, yeah. I also,
Very
so I need to
nice.
throw this out. I have to plug it a little bit. So I'm also the vice president of the Dallas Fort Worth Veterans Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
I am
Yeah.
the executive director for an Undaunted Warhorse initiative. It's for temporary housing of veterans during transitions, either going through hard times, getting out of the military, getting out of jail. So
Mm-hmm.
we look for donations of RV trailers.
Oh,
And
nice.
we find RV park for them and we house them. It's temporary, up to a year, depending on the situation. And then I'm
Yeah.
also doing it's a nonprofit. It's called Mission Ready. It's all civilians, but it's all for veteran support stuff. So I
Okay.
do stay somewhat busy, even though I
Wow.
work from home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, shoot, man, we're gonna have to get you guys to you and whoever else from these organizations come back on for one of the fireside chats to just talk about the what you guys are doing. I try to highlight once a week, have a veteran organization or a veteran-owned business or something like that, and try to highlight it. So, and then if you shoot me the website and all that stuff, I'll put it on the on this one as well, just so it's on there. But
Yeah, absolutely.
all right. Well, it sounds good. Hey, man, thanks for coming on. Thanks for doing this. Great story. A successful story. Yeah, 5 deployments. Isn't that what you say? Or six? What is it?
It's
Five.
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 It's
Five
four
deployments.
official. The one deployment
Yeah,
was
yeah,
from January '06 to January '07, so it was a whole year.
yeah. It's a
Just so
long
happens
one.
my R&R was right in the middle. So
I love it. All right. Well, hey, I try to close out all the podcasts and I ask, do you have any words of wisdom? Do you have anything you'd like to share before we kind of close this out?
I do real quick, and
Yeah.
and I'll go into some other time. I'll go on the process of it, but I want to throw out there because we all know about PTSD and how the suicides are going too crazy. I started, so I call it DSTP. It's backwards, and it's deter suicide through purpose. Um,
Ooh,
if you can spread the word to turn PTSD around and deter suicide through purpose, that's what we need. We need to give veterans a purpose. That's it. They spent their time in the military being told what to do, structured, a mission every day they wake up. They knew what they're going to do the rest of the day. They just need purpose. So if you know anything, if you have any jobs or any type of hobbies that you know of, pass it along and get them involved. Give them a purpose. That's it. So
absolutely. Man, I'm going to steal that from you. That was good.
get it
Uh,
out there. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Man, I really like that. Well, I close out every podcast by talking about veteran suicide. So that was a good transition, and I thank you for that. But one last time to you, thanks for coming on. I truly enjoyed talking to you, listening to your story, and thanks for sharing it with everybody.
Thank you.
All right. To all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. I know Jamie cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies you serve with. Ask them how they're doing. If they need a helping hand, please give them that helping hand. All right. One last time, thank you for coming on. And to all the listeners, stay motivated, change your socks.